Hey guys, it's Big Steve. I've had some requests from guys in the clan about how to go about starting bossing, about how to get away from using full revolution and start kind of not quite using full manual, but just to kind of get into doing some better damage and controlling your abilities a little more. Whether you're new to bossing and want to give it a go, if you want to improve your kill times because you're using full revolution already, or you generally just want to control your abilities a little more for a slayer or whatever you like to do, I'll be covering all of this and pretty much everything to do with the basics of what you need to know and what you want to set up for yourself to get into bossing or slayer. So I'll be showing you a bunch of useful stuff in this video, including bank presets, how to set up your action bars, going into some of the settings for combat, setting up summoning, and some just general bossing stuff that you want to know. So getting started, these clips were taken using my Iron Man account that's currently on free to play because I haven't bonded it yet and I don't want to mess up my mains action bar setup. I don't want to be messing around with that, so we hopped on the Iron Man for this. If you're bored, feel free to check out my stream on Twitch at the Big Steve. I stream on my main and my Iron Man. Just so you know, on this account, for whatever reason, and on my main as well, just today, of course, when I went to record this video, the action bars are glitched for me. So if I have any free spaces, it just kind of overlaps other action bars. So don't worry about those for now. You can see the real action bar in the menu that I have open on the screen. So just ignore the one that's on my HUD for now. Let's explain the difference between some abilities, just in case you may have gotten an action bar from the wiki and you have no idea what's going on. So if you already kind of know the difference between different abilities, you can skip this part of the video. So to start off, we have just some basic abilities. They're literally called basic abilities. You gain adrenaline from using them. They don't cost any adrenaline. And the setup I'm going to show you, it's going to let the game automatically use these abilities for you. Second, we have threshold abilities. These need 50% adrenaline to use, are usually more damage than your basic abilities. They cost a small bit of adrenaline to use, and you'll want to be using these manually. So what you'll do is you'll have the game automatically use your basic abilities, you'll build up a little bit of adrenaline, and then you can choose whether you want to use the thresholds or finally the ultimate abilities. These abilities you need 100% adrenaline to use, so a full adrenaline bar. They generally deal the most damage, but that's not always the case. And they'll use all of your adrenaline. So you want to use these manually as well. So you get into some decision making there about when to use your thresholds or when to use your ultimates. And it's really up to you. It's trial and error. You can figure out what works best where, and that's the fun in it. Now, before we move on, there are some abilities worth mentioning, and these would be channeled abilities, or simply put, abilities that take some time to use. So you'll use them, and then say it'll be like 3 seconds before you can use another ability. And if you decide to move while using them, they'll be canceled, so you'll stop doing damage. Generally, you'll want to use these abilities as well, manually. So here I have a little melee setup. I'll show you what's going on. So you have a bunch of basic abilities inside our little yellow rectangle. Any abilities inside this little yellow rectangle will be used automatically by RuneScape. So what we want to do is we just want to put our basic abilities in there so that it'll start building adrenaline for us. And as we gain adrenaline, we can choose which one of our high damage abilities we want to use. So either our thresholds, maybe we want to use a channeled basic ability, whatever we want to really do, or if we want to save up 100% adrenaline to use an ultimate. That's really up to you. You want to bind any abilities you're going to be using manually to a key on your keyboard. It's just going to make your life easier so you can keep your mouse free for moving around or avoiding things or eating food or drinking potions or whatever you need. Finding a good action bar that you want to use is as simple as taking a look at the action bars that are available on the wiki. These are some of the best ones that you could use, so find one that works for you. So you can simply Google for optimal action bars and RS3. The wiki page should come up that you can take a look at. I won't be covering all of the different action bars, as there's a ton of different action bars for different uses on there. Some being for slayers, some for multiple enemies at once. So find one that suits your purpose and try to copy it to the best of your ability. From there, just drag some ultimates and threshold abilities onto your action bar that's outside of the rectangle and bind them to a key. Let's get into some settings that you might want to use. To start off, you want to make sure that you're on revolution here. You want to have this box checked. As for our little yellow rectangle, we can change how large or small it is from this menu here. And that just basically tells us how many abilities will be used automatically. Scrolling down a little bit, we have automatically trigger basic abilities. We want this checked and we want the others unchecked. Under action bar here, we'll come back to these in a second. What we want to talk about right now is action bar binding. This is super important here. So we want both of these options checked. The first option is going to automatically swap our bar when we load bank presets. The second one is when we swap weapons. For example here, if I swap to my bow, aside from the glitchiness here, it's going to swap to our range bar. So you want to have one for every style. So you can see here I have one for melee dual wield. We want our style, primary bar, and then the action bar. So you can see action bar 1 is my melee dual wield. Action bar 2 is actually my secondary action bar, which I'll get into later, so don't worry about that. But we will cover this because it's important. Action bar 3 is my melee two-handed action bar. The first slot being whatever style we want to use. The secondary one being primary bar. We always want this to be primary bar. The third option being the action bar that has the abilities we want to use. And we want one for each. So melee two-hand, range dual wield, magic, etc., etc. So I want to set up one for all of these, all of them being primary bar for action bar here. So just make sure you test this out, make sure that it works properly, that you can swap between multiple action bars for all your styles, all your different weapons and stuff. And once you have that set up, we'll move on. If you've had a chance to play with your setup so far into the video, you'll know that you're going to have to spam these buttons whenever you want to use your abilities. Now we can avoid this by using something called ability queuing, which I personally don't use, but if you're new to this type of building adrenaline using ultimates and thresholds manually kind of setup, you can always try both and see which one you like better. So say for example I wanted to use the assault ability. It's on cooldown, so I would have to spam for it until the cooldown is there. So I'll do it again with destroy here. So you can see I'm spamming T, it's not working until it comes all the way back around. We can avoid this by turning on ability queuing. So this is the section that we skipped under action bar. So once again, settings, gameplay, action bar. We turn on ability queuing. While you're in here, you might as well turn on automatically trigger regenerate so that when you're out of combat, your extra adrenaline will be converted into health. So now if we give this a try with ability queuing, you'll see how it works. Whenever I have enough adrenaline to use an ability, I can queue it up, or even I can queue it up before I have enough adrenaline to use the ability, and it will automatically use it whenever I can. So I'll queue up destroy right now, then all I have to simply do is wait for my adrenaline to build up and it will automatically use my ability. It works for ultimates, it works for any ability. I can even queue up my basic abilities manually if I want to. Ability queuing is really nice to get familiar with this kind of setup, but in the long run you want to have it disabled. No matter what you're doing combat related, you'll want to have a secondary action bar. This action bar should include any abilities that you want to use regardless of what combat style you're using. Some examples being anticipation, freedom. If you have surge, surge is great to put in here. Even barge and escape you can use in regardless of what style you're using. Another great ability would be eat food. Eat food is great. You can bind it to a key and you can see here it'll eat the first piece of food that I have in my inventory, so I don't have to take my mouse and click it manually. Another good thing to use your secondary action bar for would be binding your protect prayers to keys. Regardless of what style you're using, you want to drag these from your prayer book into your action bar and bind those to keys so you can swap your prayers very quickly. In order to set up an additional action bar, we're going to go to our settings here, combat and action bar. We're going to click on the action bar section that we saw our ability queuing in. Down here, we'll see display additional action bars, and we're going to select an action bar that we're not currently using for any of the setups that we did earlier. This will pop up a random action bar on the screen somewhere, and you may have to reorganize them to make it look neat and tidy. From here, we can hop back to our action bar binding, and we'll try to find a section that doesn't have any style currently listed for it. For me, I've used action bar setup 2, so I've gone with no style, additional action bar 1, and no action bar preset. And that will allow us to change between our action bars and keep our secondary action bar the same every time. Another key to bossing is summoning, so I'll go through how to set up and change some options for summoning that'll make your life a little easier. Your summoning icon here, or your familiar options, you can right click and click select follower interaction. This will allow you to change what clicking this familiar button does depending on what type of follower you have out. So if you have a familiar out, so say you have like a pack yak or a tortoise or something, I have mine set to take BOB. So anytime I click on this, I'll take food or potions or whatever it is from my familiar. You can have it to give. If you're skilling, say you want to take out a bunch of stuff, you can spam click this. Like I said before, you can drag abilities to your action bar. So you can actually drag this summoning icon here and bind this to a key. So you can take food or do whatever, interact with your follower with a key bind, which is really nice. Another annoying thing about using familiars or any type of follower pet is this left click option. So you can go into settings under gameplay, combat and action bar attack options, and you can click this hide familiar options for the interaction menu, so that when I hover over it, my familiar, it doesn't show that annoying dialog box, and I can click him all I want and he'll follow me around. To make a preset, simply fill your inventory and your gear with whatever you want to wear. So we'll make a bossing preset right now. We'll get my items out and we'll grab some food, grab some tuna. From here, I'll click the settings here and it'll open our preset window. Now, if you remember, you'll have 10 slots and you'll also have a familiar slot, which you can use to fill your familiar with food or whatever you want. Like if you have a pack yak or whatever, you would do that. So to save the preset, simply click overwrite. You can change the name of this preset as well. There's a ton of different names. You can see here I have one for fletching, so I can bank really quickly. This backpack icon, if this is checked, it'll save whatever you have in your inventory. The helmet icon is your gear. And if this summoning box is checked and you have a familiar out, it will fill your familiar with whatever you have in this familiar section, which I can't really show you because I'm on free to play right now. So if I just empty my inventory, so you can see I've got nothing on me right now, I can come into my bank and I can just click 2 because this is my bossing preset, and I'll automatically get loaded and I'm ready to go. Alternatively, I can open my bank, and then I know that my bossing preset is 2, so I can hit Control 2 and that will load my preset number 2 as well. Having access to War's Retreat is pretty much required for bossing, and you can get here by simply going north of the Draenor Lodestone and clicking on War's Insignia. You will need 60 combat, level 60 combat level to get in here. If it won't let you go into War's Insignia, you can go visit Death here, and you can go through his door to the left up here. You enter War's Retreat. Alternatively, if you have 10 boss kills, you'll get a teleport here. It'll help you get out of a lot of sticky situations that you get into. You can bind this to a key as well. Even if you don't boss, having this teleport is great, as it gives you access to a bonfire for increased health, really quick bank, and if you have enough boss kills, access to an altar to restore your prayers, as well as some adrenaline crystals that you can use to get your adrenaline to full before you go do something. A good way to break into bossing is by doing Reaper assignments, and you can come here to Death, which you can get to from War's Retreat or from Draenor like I showed you a second ago, and you can just talk to Death and he'll give you a little Reaper gem. This will be a red gem that looks similar to your enchanted gem for slaying, and you can do a Soul Reaper task. You can do one every day and it'll select a random boss for you to kill a certain amount of times. Doing this will award you with a decent chunk of Slayer XP as well as Reaper points that you can spend in his Reaper shop here. If you're struggling with a boss or just want someone to show you how everything works, you can always ask in your clan, or you can ask in our clan, and I'm usually down to help people out with their Reapers all the time. So that's pretty much all the basics that you'll need to know to get your foot in the door, to make the switch between using full revolution, start using some abilities manually, some things you can set up in your bank and your settings to kind of help you out. Like always, if you need help, feel free to join our clan. I can help you myself, and happy bossing.